Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the GSL-English podcast. My name is Gideon, and this is a podcast for all learners and lovers of the English language to practice and improve in a relaxed and natural way. And in this episode, we are going to focus on something that I think is absolutely essential when we are learning or wanting to improve in anything. So, of course, we're going to base this around the English language. But I think you have to learn to do this one thing if you really want to improve in anything, or if you want to grow in certain areas, perhaps socially or within your personality. But it's not always easy to do. In fact, I think it can sometimes be one of the most difficult things to do. And that is learning to laugh at yourself. Learning to not take yourself so seriously. And I think, okay, there is an element of this which is dictated by our personality type, who we are, our upbringing. But I think we can all learn to not take ourselves so seriously, to laugh at ourselves. And I think if we can do that, if we can gain that ability to just look in the mirror in certain situations and laugh at whatever happened, at whatever mistake that we made, rather than focusing on it, self-criticizing, analyzing and beating ourselves up, worrying about what everyone thinks. I think if we can learn just to laugh at ourselves, at our own expense, then that allows us opportunity to improve, to grow. So in this episode, we're going to kind of dive into the neuroscience behind laughing at yourself. We're going to look at why science says we should sometimes just laugh about certain situations, mistakes we make, as I said, things that are out of our control, things that directly affect us, or sometimes we just got to laugh. So we're going to look at the science behind it. We're going to look at perhaps how we can learn to laugh at ourselves, and also how this can apply to our English. So, of course, as always, as we go through, we're going to read an article together, but my thoughts, my opinions, although I have notes, these episodes are never scripted. So I'm just going to talk and analyze and discuss this with you in a natural and authentic way. So you can hear vocabulary and expressions used, as I say, in a natural way, but also just get used to the rhythm and flow of British English, particularly here in the southeast of London. So if you are new here, or if you're a returning viewer and you haven't subscribed on either YouTube or followed on Spotify, please do so now. It's amazing. I'm not calling you out here, but it's amazing how many of you regularly watch these videos or listen to the podcast and you're not subscribed and you don't follow. Now, I'm not telling you what to do, but it'd really help me out if you could just give the podcast a follow, subscribe, whatever it is on the platform that you're enjoying or taking in this podcast. I assume you're enjoying it. That was an assumption. I hope you are. If you can just give it a follow and a like, it really does help me out. So that's the theme of today. But as always, this podcast isn't necessarily about studying English. It's not about getting the pens and paper out, which if you do, that's great. But I really just want you to chill out with me and just enjoy British English as we talk about some interesting topics. So, if you can, I don't know when you listen to this podcast. I know many of you listen to it when you're traveling or commuting to work, but if it is at all possible, I do encourage you to just switch off for a little bit. Just relax, take some time for yourself. Pause it now, go make yourself a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, something a little stronger. It's Sunday afternoon, perhaps when you're watching this. Maybe make some lunch, which is what I'm going to do after this because I'm absolutely famished right now. I'm starving. So basically, what am I trying to say? Just chill out. Life's busy, life's stressful. Just enjoy the English language with me. So before we get into it, I hope you've had a good week. Hope you're having a lovely weekend wherever you are in the world. What have I been up to this week? Well, I mowed my lawn today. Now, many of you will know I'm a lawn lover. I enjoy mowing the grass. I enjoy looking after the lawn. And today, I'm a little bit late, was the first mow of the year, which is a big moment for all us grass and lawn lovers. I say for all of us, perhaps I'm the only one, but I just love a nice garden lawn. I love mowing it, and you get those stripes in it, and I like to stare at it with a nice, strong, must be strong, cup of tea. So that's what I did before this. Took way too long. I'm now behind schedule, but who cares? It is what it is. And actually, this weekend, my wife and I, we've got a pretty chilled weekend. We've been very busy recently. We've had friends' weddings. We've been rather social, trying to have people round to the house, catching up with old friends. And every weekend seems to have been rammed. So we said this weekend, we're just chilling out. We're just relaxing together. So I cannot wait. We're just going to take some time out. Going to have some dinner this evening. Going around my parents for dinner tomorrow night. But yeah, I don't know about you. Sometimes just the thought of having a weekend of absolutely nothing is glorious. It's fantastic. I am so excited about it. Maybe I'm just getting old and boring, but I'm okay with that. If this is what old and boring is, I'm fine with that. So let me know in the comments, what's your perfect weekend? Is it a bit of chill, bit of relaxation, and then doing something? Do you like to be active all weekend? Do you like to party all weekend? Do you like to just switch off? What do you like to do? I think a lot of it's dependent on the weather, isn't it? Now, just as a little note, on my screen where I can see myself to make sure the camera's working, it keeps freezing. I do wholeheartedly hope that that's not going to come across in the edit. If it does, well, I say that if it does, I'm just going to have to re-record this so you won't know anyway. Irrelevant point. I'm going to move on. But it's annoying me. I just want you to know that. It's just annoying me. So yeah, very good. What are we talking about today? What are we talking about? Oh yeah, learning to laugh at yourself. Now, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about laughing at yourself? Now, I want you to be completely honest. What do we mean by that? When I talk about, laughing at yourself, I just want to explain at the beginning that when we use that term, we're not talking about looking in the mirror and just laughing at what you see. That's not it. It's not always putting yourself down. That's not what we're trying to get at here. What we're talking about when you laugh at yourself, or being able to laugh at yourself, is if you make a mistake, perhaps when you're talking English, for example, a pronunciation mistake, and somebody points it out. It can be really difficult sometimes to handle that situation. But when we talk about laughing at ourselves, what we mean is we just laugh at the mistake. We laugh it off and we move on. Perhaps something happens at work. It's a little bit embarrassing. We wish it hadn't happened. But rather than getting really sensitive and defensive, we can just laugh at ourselves. Just laugh along with everyone else and we move on. That's what we're talking about. So we're going to dive into the neuroscience behind that. So got a little picture there, if you're watching. 3 fingers pointing at you. You've made a mistake. You've made a pronunciation mistake. People are pointing at you and laughing. It's not always nice. But what can we do to make that situation easier for ourselves, but also for our progress, for the sake of growing? What can we do? Well, let's read on. Everyone makes small mistakes. You might say the wrong word, trip on a step. That's me all the time. Or wave at someone who is actually waving at the person behind you. Oh my goodness, I hate that. How many times have you done that? Where you think someone's waving at you, so you wave back, and it's the person behind you. God, it's awful. What do we do in that situation? Well, in moments like these, some people feel embarrassed. Others simply laugh. The ability to laugh at ourselves is not just a personality trait. Scientists have found that it involves several processes in the brain. These processes help us understand humour, manage emotions, and connect with other people. So it's interesting here that, well, actually, I really like this point at the beginning, because if we're being honest with ourselves, that self-evaluation, and we think, you know what, I do find it quite difficult to laugh at myself. Sometimes my natural inclination is to get annoyed, to get defensive or embarrassed. Well, it's not dependent on a personality trait. A personality trait is a certain aspect of our personality or an attitude that we always lean towards. But actually, it's processes in the brain. And these processes are what help us to understand humour, to manage our emotions. And because of that, in turn, we can connect with other people. So let's get into that. How does the brain understand humour? When something funny happens, the brain works through several steps. First, the brain notices that something unexpected has happened. This often involves the prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain that helps us think and interpret situations. Now, when I was preparing this podcast, I was trying to understand the parts of the brain and just to kind of help go along with this, but I was way out of my depth, so I decided to leave that out in case I get anything wrong. I always try and make sure that everything I talk about in this podcast is as accurate to my ability. But as I was studying the brain, I thought, this is not for me. So we're just going to go through those terms briefly. But if you want to do some more research on your own, please do. So let's start at the beginning. Someone says something or something happens and we're trying to transmit that humour. What happens? Well, the brain in that moment works through several steps. The first is that the brain notices something unexpected has happened, meaning that something surprising or not planned or that we were not expecting has happened. So this involves the prefrontal cortex. This is the front part of our brain that helps with thinking, planning, and understanding situations. So that's the part of the brain that's involved, the front. And this is what helps us to think and interpret situations. When we're trying to interpret, a synonym could be, to process that in a way, to try and understand, to make sense of the situation. So that's the first thing. Next, the brain decides whether the situation is safe or serious. If the brain realizes that nothing dangerous is happening, we may feel amusement instead of stress. Finally, the brain sends signals to the body. Muscles in the face and chest move, and we begin to laugh. So humour is not controlled by only one part of the brain. It is the result of several brain systems working together. Isn't that just incredible? The fact that we might instantly laugh at something, but before we laugh, the brain has gone through several processes. I always find that absolutely fascinating. So firstly, it goes to the prefrontal cortex. Next, the brain decides, what is this situation? Is this a safe situation? Is it serious? How do we need to respond? So then the brain decides, okay, there's nothing serious. Often what we might feel in that situation is amusement instead of stress. And then the signals are sent to muscles in the face and chest to move, and that's why we smile, maybe our shoulders move, and we begin to laugh. So really, the brain is going through so many processes when we find something funny, or when we are going to find something funny at ourselves, which we're going to go on to in a moment. That's the process. And I thought what's interesting here is the brain is signaling what you should do. And that might just be the way that our personality has almost trained it. So what our brain might do in certain situations, if something happens, it sends the signal that you're embarrassed, that you're annoyed, that you should defend yourself. And that's when we can't laugh at ourselves. But what we want to do in certain situations, that's important, in certain situations, this doesn't apply to every situation. There are some situations where we should be bold, we should be firm and not laugh at ourselves. But there's many when we can. Let's imagine you're walking with some friends and you trip up a curb. What's our signal? What's our brain processing? Does it put it into the box, which is you're embarrassed, you're ashamed, no one should laugh at you? Or does it go into the box of, I tripped, how silly am I? And you move on. It's that process. It's the brain processing it all, which dictates how we feel. I find it absolutely fascinating. Again, I am the furthest thing from an expert or even knowledgeable on this subject. So I've just put together as much research as I can for my enjoyment, but I'm by no means an expert. So what about if something happens and our brain processes it to the point, generally speaking, that we feel embarrassed? Well, when we make a mistake, the brain may first react with embarrassment. This reaction is connected to a brain area called the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps us notice errors and social problems. So we might feel embarrassment. That's that feeling of discomfort when we think we've done something awkward. There's many things that embarrass us. Some people are more inclined to embarrassment. Others are not. It's just dependent on who we are. But that might be our first reaction. I think it is for me in certain context. And this is connected to the brain area, the anterior cingulate cortex. And that's the brain region involved in noticing mistakes and managing emotions. However, the brain can quickly change how it understands the situation. The prefrontal cortex can decide that the mistake is small and not important. When this happens, the feeling of embarrassment can turn into humour. Psychologists call this process cognitive reappraisal, which means changing the way we interpret an event. So what's our first reaction? Is it embarrassment? Well, I like this point here that the brain can quickly change how it understands, how it's processed. That prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain at the front that's deciding, what is this situation, can actually just put it into the box where it's small. It's not important. You don't need to be embarrassed. And that's when we can turn that feeling into humour. And this is called cognitive reappraisal. And that is changing the way we think about a situation so it feels less negative. So cognitive reappraisal is just changing the way we process, changing the way we think. And it kind of highlights to me that there is room for change. It's not just the way we're wired. It's not just the way that we are. We can change the way we think. People who can laugh at themselves are often very good at this. So why does laughter feel so good? Why is laughter so much easier than any other emotion? Well, laughter also activates the brain's reward system. When we laugh, the brain releases chemicals such as dopamine and endorphins. We've talked about these quite a bit on the podcast. These chemicals create feelings of pleasure and relaxation. So laughter activates the reward system, kind of like the brain system that creates feelings of pleasure and motivation and enjoyment. And when we laugh, we release two things. We've got dopamine. That's the brain chemical linked to things that make us happy and motivation. And we've got endorphins, natural chemicals that reduce pain and increase happiness. And what's interesting, endorphins can also reduce stress and help people feel closer to each other. Because laughter, in turn, produces these positive feelings, our brains naturally encourage it. So everything based around genuine laughter really is just creating positivity in ourselves. Gets those dopamines and endorphins going. It reduces stress, and the person that we're with, if you can laugh with someone, you get closer to that person. So you can see why it is so beneficial if in certain situations we can just learn to laugh at ourselves. So rather than situations, we trip up a curb, we make a mistake with our pronunciation, rather than that being a negative situation, if we learn to laugh at it, it becomes ultimately positive. We create memories, but we also create room for growth. And in turn, laughter is contagious. If something is contagious, it means someone else can catch it. Have you ever started laughing just because someone else was laughing? This happens because of special systems in the brain called mirror neurons. These systems help us copy the emotions and actions of other people. And those mirror neurons are brain cells that activate when we observe another person's actions or emotions. So it's the part that basically makes us copy them. When we hear laughter, our brain automatically reacts, which can make us smile or laugh too. This helps groups of people share emotions and feel connected. So when we can laugh in situations, we have the ability to make somebody else laugh. And thinking about what we just looked at, we've got the ability to make them feel more positive, to release those endorphins. Isn't that such a great thing? So you can see the benefits of learning to laugh at ourselves in certain situations is great. I know there's certain therapy that some people do, which if I'm right, is just called laughter therapy. So you're in a room, one person starts laughing, and then eventually many people just start laughing. And there is a science behind it. But what's the benefit? What's the benefit of doing this? What is the benefit of not laughing at ourselves, of laughing at ourselves, and just not taking ourselves too seriously? Well, another important part of laughing at ourselves is learning to not take ourselves too seriously. People who can accept their imperfections often experience lower stress and stronger relationships. When we are overly concerned about appearing perfect, small mistakes can feel much bigger than they really are. Being able to smile at our own imperfections helps reduce pressure and make everyday situations feel more relaxed. We're all imperfections. We all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. Or you got that saying, "Pobody is nerfect," from The Office US, if you've ever watched it, meaning that, look, I've even said that expression wrong. We all make mistakes. We've got to accept our own imperfections. But when we're overly concerned about appearing perfect, those small mistakes, those little errors, they become massive in our minds. So if we can, just learn to smile at mistakes, learn to smile at our own imperfections, it makes those situations just more relaxed and we can move on. But it is important to keep a healthy balance. Keep it in its right proportion. Not taking ourselves too seriously does not mean ignoring responsibilities or making fun of ourselves in a harmful way. Instead, it means recognizing that mistakes are a normal part of being human. Healthy humor allows us to acknowledge our flaws without damaging our self-respect. It helps us to stay confident while also remaining humble and approachable. There's a balance, isn't there? We're not just trying to become the butt of a joke in every room that we walk in a harmful way or a self-deprecating way. We keep our self-respect, but we're just acknowledging that we got flaws. It's who we are. It's okay. It's not a problem. Don't be embarrassed by them. Just laugh at it. Just relax. Just smile. And often when you do that, it de-escalates the situation. Being able to laugh at ourselves can also help us deal with everyday stress. Instead of focusing on embarrassment, humour allows the brain to relax and move on. People who use humour in this way often experience lower stress levels and greater emotional balance. Laughing at small mistakes also reminds us that nobody is perfect. If we can learn to laugh at things, it really does help to deal with everyday stress. I know I've been trying this a little bit when I was preparing this podcast, just when I'm driving around. Sometimes people can annoy you when you're driving, or you make a mistake or whatever. Just learn to shrug it off. Just learn to smile. It's not that big a deal. Rather than focusing on embarrassment, humour, it just allows the brain to relax a little bit. So rather than going into stress, defence, active mode, we just let humour take over. And that creates lower stress levels, greater emotional balance, and then we can just move on much quicker. But how are you at doing that? Can you laugh at yourself? Do you take yourself too seriously? Although some people seem naturally comfortable laughing at their mistakes, the ability can be developed with practice. One useful step is accepting that mistakes are normal. Everyone makes them, and they are often much less important than we imagine. I like that. Firstly, you just got to accept that mistakes are going to happen. And we realise that those mistakes are much less important than we imagined. They're not that big a deal. Another helpful strategy is to pause and reframe the situation. Instead of thinking, "This is terrible," we can ask ourselves whether the mistake will still matter tomorrow. Often, the answer is no. It can also help us to notice the humour in everyday situations. Small misunderstandings or awkward moments can sometimes become funny stories later. Finally, practicing self-compassion is important. Treating ourselves with the same kindness we would show a friend makes it easier to respond to mistakes with humour rather than criticism. There's a lot that we can take from this, to train ourselves to laugh, to be able to laugh at ourselves. Sometimes just takes a moment. If we, I'm going to use that example again. We trip in front of a group of friends. Pause and reframe rather than thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. They're all going to think I'm an idiot. Doesn't matter. You just laugh at it. Okay, it might go a little bit red, but it's not that big a deal. Maybe you can all laugh together about it. But also when we can laugh at situations like that, or perhaps we make a pronunciation mistake, just laugh about it. Those memories, you laugh together about it. They become connecting moments with friends, with colleagues. Remember that time you tripped up the curb? Ha ha ha. It's all okay. It's not that big a deal. Is it going to change the world? Is it really going to affect our lives? No, it's okay. Give yourself some room to laugh at mistakes. And self-compassion. If someone else made a mistake, you wouldn't criticize them and chastise them for it. You have a little laugh and you move on. Well, be self-compassionate. Pause and think, is it that big a deal? Can I just laugh this off? But why does this matter when learning English? Well, this idea is especially important for people learning English, learning anything or any language, I feel. When we learn a new language, mistakes are inevitable, meaning that they are going to happen. I can promise you that right now. There is no such thing as perfect English. It does not exist. I've made mistakes in this episode. I've made mistakes in every episode of the podcast because I'm speaking naturally from the heart. It is inevitable. It's going to happen. We might pronounce a word incorrectly. We might use the wrong tense or choose a word that sounds strange to native speakers. All right, it is what it is. These moments have they can feel embarrassing, but they're a natural part of learning. If learners can laugh at their mistake, the brain treats the situation as safe rather than stressful. This reduces anxiety and makes it easier to keep speaking and practicing. Research shows that when learners feel relaxed and confident, their brains are better able to absorb new vocabulary and grammar. That's a really important point. So if we can learn to laugh at our English errors and mistakes, but what our brain does is it thinks, oh, it's okay, this situation is safe. I don't need to be stressed. And in turn, this reduces anxiety and it makes it easier to keep on speaking, to keep on practicing. And when we feel more relaxed, when we feel more confident, science has shown that we're much more likely to absorb new vocabulary and grammar. That's a massive point. So you're going to make mistakes. They're going to be inevitable, but our attitude towards them can be an indicator of how much we're going to learn moving forward. Learning to not take ourselves so seriously with English or any language is essential. Another reason is that humour also builds connection with others. When language learners laugh at small mistakes, conversations often become more relaxed and friendly. In this way, the ability to laugh at ourselves is not only a social skill, it is a powerful tool for language learning. By accepting mistakes with humour, learners can turn awkward moments into opportunities to improve and enjoy the process along the way. When we laugh with someone, we connect with them. And one way of laughing with someone is just laughing at our mistakes. But I think there's an interesting point here that let's imagine that we're with somebody that makes a mistake in English or whatever they're doing. They might laugh at themselves, but we can play our part by not pointing the finger and continually laughing at them. We might have a little bit giggle together, appropriate to that situation, but it wouldn't be kind, would it? It wouldn't create a positive environment if we just kept laughing at them, pointing the finger, and every day bringing up with them that mistake they made. No, there's got to be balance. And, as well as laughing at ourselves, we try to make others feel better. Create an environment where it's okay to find the humour, where it's going to be constructive, where it's going to be positive. think we all, in certain situations, have the ability to take ourselves too seriously. I know I do. I think at first with this podcast, I think I took everything just a little bit too seriously. Everything had to be perfect, comparing it to others. There's mistakes, but that's okay. We're all a little bit rough around the edge. Accept that. And we realize that I can just laugh at myself. So, we might be okay doing that in certain situations, or it might be something that we feel that we do need to work on. I think it's a really important skill. I really do. If you want to improve in your English, just learn to just laugh at yourself at those mistakes, to not take yourself so seriously, and allow, allow yourself to create a more comfortable and relaxed environment around your English. It's okay. And I think in situations we can just ask ourselves, is it that big a deal? All right, I'm a little bit embarrassed, but who cares? It's okay. And sometimes we have the opportunity to make others feel more relaxed about making mistakes. If we laugh at our mistakes, if we create an environment where it's not that big a deal, well, we can make others feel that and just create these positive vibes wherever we are. So that's the thought in today's podcast. I do hope you enjoy it. If you did get to this point in the podcast, I want you to write laugh in the comments, but also share your opinions with me. Do you find it difficult? Do you think it's important? Or do you think it's irrelevant? Even if you disagree, share your opinion, because if you share your opinion in the comments, you're much more likely to remember this topic and then based around it. So there you go. So as always, thank you so much for watching and listening. I do appreciate it. Please don't forget to subscribe, follow, like, and leave a comment. I know I'm asking a lot of you. Please do it. It really does help me out. I appreciate it. And yeah, in everything, I just love that question. Is it that big a deal? Will it be a problem tomorrow? Once I've slept on it, is it going to be that much of a big deal? And I think that kind of thinking, that reasoning can apply to so many situations in life, things that stress us out. It's all going to be all right tomorrow. Then we don't need to worry about it. And if we're still worrying about it tomorrow, then we can deal with it, But laughter is contagious. I love that point. Very good. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. I do appreciate it. I hope you have a lovely week. I hope you have some better weather than we're having here in the southeast of England at the moment. It was good. It dangled the carrot, and now it's rubbish again. So I hope you have some lovely weather. I hope you have a productive week. And I'll see you all next Sunday. Have a good one, guys.